8 types of people we should not help. In this special video, I'm going to show you 8 types of people we shouldn't help. The last one will surprise you. But before we begin, I want you to pay close attention to this story because it will be important for you to understand the great lesson of this video. Once upon a time, there was a farmer named Pedro who lived in a small village. Pedro was known for his kindness and was always willing to help others. One day, he found a snake trapped in a snare in his field. Although it was dangerous, Pedro felt compassion for the snake and decided to free it. Pedro took care of the snake, feeding it and giving it a safe place to recover. However, as soon as the snake felt better, it bit Pedro and slid away. Hurt and surprised, Pedro realized that the nature of the snake was to bite, no matter how much help it received. This story teaches us that some people, like the snake, don't change their nature. Sometimes, in our desire to help, we ignore the signs and end up getting hurt. It's crucial to know who we are helping and to understand that not everyone will value or appreciate our efforts. Imagine your energy is like a battery. Some people charge it while others drain it faster than a phone with 100 apps open. Sounds familiar? Let's explore these energy vampires and why it's crucial to recognize them. Before diving into the first type of person, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. Let's begin. Number 1, the ungrateful. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to have a black hole instead of a heart? These are people who, no matter how much you give, always want more and are never satisfied. Imagine you're in a restaurant enjoying a delicious meal with friends. And suddenly, you hear someone complaining loudly about the food, the service, even the color of the napkins. Yes, you guessed it. That's the ungrateful professional in action. But why do some people seem perpetually unsatisfied? Psychology has some interesting answers. According to a study by the University of California, people with low self-esteem tend to be less grateful. It's as if they have a filter that only lets in the negative, blocking out all the good that life offers them. Now, we're not saying you should cut ties with every person who forgets to say thank you, but it is important to recognize when someone is constantly abusing your kindness. As the famous businessman Richard Branson once said, "Treat your employees how you want them to treat your best customers." We could extend this advice to all our relationships. Think of gratitude like a plant. It needs watering and care to grow. If you're constantly giving water, your time, energy, and resources to a plant that never blooms, maybe it's time to ask yourself if you're cultivating in the wrong garden. But be careful not to confuse ingratitude with constructive honesty. The friend who tells you you've got spinach in your teeth before an important meeting isn't ungrateful, they're a hero without a cape. The difference lies in the intention and the pattern of behavior. A fascinating study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology revealed that grateful people are not only happier but also have stronger, longer-lasting relationships. It's as if gratitude is the invisible glue that keeps our social connections together. So, what do we do with these people? The answer isn't simple, but we can take some lessons from positive psychology. Martin Seligman, considered the father of this branch of psychology, suggests that cultivating gratitude not only benefits the person receiving it but also the person practicing it. So instead of getting frustrated with the ungrateful, we could see them as an opportunity to strengthen our own ability to appreciate the good in life. It's like going to the gym, but for our gratitude muscle. However, don't confuse being grateful with being a bottomless well. Setting healthy boundaries is just as important as being generous. As the writer Brené Brown once said, generosity isn't infinite. And it's not true generosity if it comes from resentment. Remember, Their lack of gratitude says more about them than it does about you. As psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change." So, the next time you find yourself dealing with an ungrateful person, take a deep breath. Remember your own worth. And ask yourself, does this person deserve my energy? If the answer is no, it's okay to step back. You're not being selfish, you're practicing self-care. And if you decide to continue helping, do it because you genuinely want to, not for recognition. As philosopher Immanuel Kant said, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. Now let's move on to the second type of person we shouldn't help, the lazy. Have you ever met someone who seems to be allergic to effort? These are people who always have an excuse for not doing anything. As if the couch were their natural habitat and the remote control an extension of their hand. Welcome to the fascinating world of the lazy. Masters of the art of doing nothing. Who teach us valuable lessons about productivity, or the lack of it. Imagine you're at a work meeting. And you hear someone say, "I couldn't finish the report because my cat ate my motivation." Yes. You guessed it. That's the professional slacker in action. But why do some people seem to have a PhD in procrastination? Science has some answers. According to a study conducted by the University of Calgary, laziness might actually be an evolutionary strategy to conserve energy. It's as if our caveman ancestors left us the gene for energy-saving mode. But in today's world, where we don't need to conserve energy to escape predators, this strategy can become counterproductive. Psychologist William James once said, "Nothing is so fatiguing as the eternal hanging on of an incomplete task," and boy, was he right. Procrastination not only affects our productivity but also our mental health. A study published in the Journal of Psychological Science found that chronic procrastinators have higher stress levels and poorer overall health. But all is not lost for our lazy friends. As the famous physicist Albert Einstein once said, "Laziness is the mother of all invention." And while he probably said it while looking for an excuse not to comb his hair, he has a point. Sometimes the need to avoid work can lead to creative and innovative solutions. Now, how do we identify a chronic slacker? Here are some warning signs. 1. The king of excuses. These individuals have more excuses than a cat has lives. "I couldn't exercise because my plant needed me to sing to it to grow," is just the tip of the iceberg. 2. The "I'll do it tomorrow" expert, for them. Tomorrow is a magical place where all pending work accumulates. Spoiler alert, that tomorrow never arrives. 3. The multitasker of leisure. They can watch Netflix, scroll through Instagram, and complain about their job all at the same time. If they put that energy into being productive, they would have solved global warming by now. 4. The shortcut seeker. They're always looking for the easiest way to do things. If there were an app to breathe for them, they'd be the first to download it. 5. The "just 5 more minutes" person, for them. The alarm clock is just a friendly suggestion. Just 5 more minutes, they say. And before they know it, an hour has passed. We're not saying you should cut ties with every person who prefers a nap over a gym session. But remember, surrounding yourself with lazy people means running the risk of becoming the odd one out in a group of motivational slackers. As businessman and motivational author Jim Rohn said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So, choose your company wisely because you might end up being the only tooth in a mouth full of motivational cavities. Now let's move on to the third type of person, the irresponsible. Have you ever met someone who seems to live in a world without consequences? Welcome to the fascinating universe of the irresponsible. Those experts in evading commitments and blaming everyone and everything but themselves. Imagine you're on a boat. And suddenly you notice there's a hole in the hull. And water starts coming in. While you and the rest of the crew desperately try to plug the hole and bail out the water. You see someone sitting calmly on the deck. Sunbathing and saying, "It's not my problem. I didn't make the hole." That, my friends, is the irresponsible person in their natural habitat. When we try to help someone with this behavior pattern, we often find ourselves in a frustrating cycle. No matter how hard we try to support them, our help rarely leads to significant progress. The irresponsible person evades responsibility and has an almost Olympic ability to blame others for their own failures. If something goes wrong, even if it's completely unrelated to our intervention, we might end up being blamed. This is not only unfair but can also have an emotional and reputational cost for those trying to help. That's why it's essential to adopt a careful approach when dealing with people who behave this way. How do we do that? An effective strategy is to invite them to reflect on their actions and the consequences of those actions. Instead of solving their problems for them, we can guide them to develop self-assessment and self-management skills. Neuroscientist Richard Davidson has shown that the brain is incredibly plastic, capable of changing and adapting even in adulthood. So, there's hope. Although they might need a little push, or perhaps an elephant-sized shove. As Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." In this context, education includes not only academic knowledge but also the ability to take responsibility and learn from mistakes. At its core, dealing with irresponsible people is an exercise in patience and self-control. As philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "The trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure. And the intelligent are full of doubt." So, the next time you find yourself dealing with a chronic irresponsible person, take a deep breath and remember. At least you have the intelligence to doubt whether you should keep helping them. In summary, while helping others is noble, there's a limit. And that limit usually begins when the other person uses your kindness as a pillow for their laziness. So, instead of getting frustrated, consider this an opportunity to practice the art of the polite but firm no. After all, sometimes the best way to help someone is not to help them at all. The translation goes on. But this gives you a detailed look at the first part of the transcript. Let me know if you'd like to continue. Number 4, the manipulators. This group presents a unique challenge because they are true artists in the art of manipulating the goodwill of others. They take advantage of sincere attempts to help, using them to satisfy their own interests without any intention of reciprocating or genuinely improving. Imagine you're in a chess game, but your opponent has the mysterious ability to move your pieces without you noticing. That's how it feels to fall into the hands of a skilled manipulator. But don't worry. Today we're going to learn how to recognize their tricks and defend ourselves from their schemes. Why do some people seem to have a PhD in manipulation? Psychology has some interesting answers. According to a study by Stanford University, people with narcissistic and Machiavellian traits tend to be more prone to manipulating others. It's as if they have an internal GPS program to find the shortest path to their own interests, regardless of who they have to step on in the process. Now, we're not saying you should put on a tinfoil hat and distrust everyone. But it is important to develop a radar to detect these emotional pirates. As the famous psychologist Robert Cialdini once said, "The best defense against manipulation is knowledge." Think of your emotional well-being as a fortress. Manipulators are like invaders trying to infiltrate your defenses. If you don't have a good security system, before you know it, they'll be sitting in your living room, eating your nachos, and controlling the remote of your life. So, How do we identify a professional manipulator? Here are some warning signs. 1. The emotional chameleon. They change their personality faster than a teenager changes moods, adapting to what they think the other person wants to see. 2. The gaslighting expert. They make you doubt your own perception of reality. Are you sure that happened like that? I think your memory is playing tricks on you. 3. The self-esteem sniper. They throw seemingly innocent comments that undermine your confidence. Oh, you're going to wear that? Well, I guess if you're comfortable. Now let's move on to the fifth type of person, the chronic critic. These people have an infallible radar for finding faults in any situation or person. From your choice of clothes to the way you organize your schedule, they'll always have something to criticize. Identifying them can be as easy as listening to their conversations. Their comments are often negative and destructive, rather than constructive. If this sounds familiar, you might be dealing with a chronic critic. Now, dealing with them can feel like navigating an emotional minefield. No matter how well-intentioned your efforts are, they'll always find a way to tear them down with sharp criticism. But why are they like this? Studies suggest that chronic critics often use criticism as a way to establish power or control over others, or even as a way to project their own insecurities. It's as if they're wearing special glasses that only allow them to see the flaws in everything. To counter their negative impact, it's crucial to maintain a balanced perspective. Don't take their criticisms personally. They often say more about themselves than about you. Try to steer the conversation towards positive aspects or constructive solutions. Sometimes, simply changing the subject is the best defense against their verbal darts. Remember, constructive criticism can be useful for personal growth. But chronic criticism simply erodes self-esteem and undermines confidence. By setting clear boundaries and maintaining a positive attitude, you can protect yourself from their negative influence while fostering a more positive and constructive environment around you. Number 6. The narcissists. Have you ever met someone who seems to have a mirror instead of a soul? Welcome to the fascinating world of narcissists. Those beings who have elevated self-love to an Olympic level. Imagine trying to fill the Grand Canyon with a glass of water. That's how futile it can feel trying to satisfy a narcissist's ego. But don't worry. You're not alone in this journey. According to a study by Indiana University, approximately 6% of the population has significant narcissistic traits. That means you probably know one or two in your daily life. But how do we identify these number one fans of themselves? Well, if you've ever met someone who believes the sun rises just to shine on their face, you're likely dealing with a narcissist. These individuals have an impressive ability to turn any conversation into a monologue about their achievements, no matter how insignificant they may be. Now, dealing with a narcissist can be more exhausting than trying to teach a cat to bark. But don't despair, there are strategies you can use. Dr. Craig Malkin, author of Reinventing Narcissism, suggests setting clear boundaries. It's not about changing the narcissist, says Malkin, but about changing how you interact with them. One effective tactic is what psychologists call selective validation. It's basically like training a dog. You reinforce the positive behavior and ignore the negative. When the narcissist shows a hint of empathy, yes, it can happen, acknowledge it. But when they start their usual self-promotion session, don't engage. Remember, you're not obligated to be the captive audience of their one-person show. As actress Bette Midler once said, the ego is a voracious octopus that feeds on your life. Don't let the narcissist in your life be that octopus. But be careful not to confuse healthy confidence with narcissism. The difference lies in empathy and a constant need for admiration. While a self-confident person can genuinely be happy for other successes, a narcissist sees those successes as a threat to their own greatness. In short, dealing with a narcissist can be challenging, but also an opportunity to strengthen your patience and compassion. And who knows? Maybe they'll even learn something. After all, as Oscar Wilde said, to know oneself is to observe the behavior of others. Number 7, the opportunist. Imagine meeting someone who always seems to be on the lookout, ready to seize any opportunity to gain something at the expense of others, without considering the consequences. This is the opportunist. Someone who has mastered the art of taking advantage of others' generosity or resources without offering anything in return except their own needs. Opportunists may seem charming and friendly, but behind that facade lies an attitude that can undermine trust in any relationship. Now, don't confuse an opportunist with someone who genuinely needs help. The difference lies in the pattern of behavior and the reciprocity. As psychologist Harriet Breaker once said, opportunists are experts at making you feel guilty when you don't meet their expectations. Spotting an opportunist can be tricky, as they often hide their true intentions behind a collaborative appearance. A key signal is the lack of reciprocity. They always receive help but rarely return favors or contribute equally. They use subtle manipulation, such as flattery or vague promises, to get what they want without truly committing to contributing. They're always around when there are benefits, but they disappear when effort or sacrifice is required on their part. Dealing with an opportunist involves setting clear boundaries and being mindful of your own resources and personal limits. It's crucial to establish expectations from the start about what you're willing to offer and what you expect in return. Number 8, the envious. Imagine you've just won the lottery. Who would you tell first? Before you start making a mental list, let me share an interesting fact. According to a study by Harvard University, 70% of lottery winners experience a deterioration in their personal relationships after their victory. The main reason? Envy. But you don't need to win millions to experience the corrosive effects of envy. From that promotion at work to that new relationship that has you on cloud 9. The envious are lurking, ready to throw their venomous darts of disapproval and resentment. So, what makes some people more prone to envy? Psychologist Sarah Protesi, in her book The Philosophy of Envy, suggests that envy arises when we perceive a gap between what we have and what we believe we deserve. It's as if we have an internal cosmic justice meter that goes crazy when someone else gets something we think should be ours. But here's the interesting part: envy isn't necessarily bad. In fact, it can be a powerful motivator. As famous inventor Thomas Edison once said, to invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. Substitute junk for envy, and you've got a recipe for success or disaster, depending on how you handle it. The key is in how we respond to envy, both ours and that of others. And here's where one of the most counterintuitive yet effective pieces of advice comes into play: keep your successes and plans a secret. Yes, you heard right. In an era where it seems like if you don't share it on social media, it didn't happen, I'm suggesting you do exactly the opposite. Why? Well, let me tell you a secret, irony intended. When you share your plans prematurely, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that's released when you actually achieve your goal. This can lead to a false sense of accomplishment, reducing your motivation to keep going. I'm not saying this, the science does. A study published in Psychological Science found that people who kept their goals secret were 70% more likely to achieve them than those who shared them widely. It's as if the universe has a twisted sense of humor: the more you talk about your dreams, the less likely they are to come true. But there's more. When you share your plans, you're not just dealing with your own psychology, you're also dealing with the psychology of others. And this is where our envious friends come into play. As writer Gore Vidal once said, Every time a friend succeeds, I die a little. Now, multiply that by every person you share your plans with. And you'll have an idea of how much negative energy you might be attracting without even realizing it. So, what do? Do we become hermits and keep all our achievements to ourselves? Not exactly. The key is to be selective. As entrepreneur Richard Branson once said, "Trust your instinct, be selective about who you share your dreams with." Think of your dreams and plans like a secret recipe. You wouldn't give it to just anyone. Would you? Only to those people you trust completely. The ones you know won't just keep it safe but will also help you improve it. Here's the trick: when you finally decide to share your plans or successes, do it in a way that inspires rather than provokes envy. Instead of saying, "I just got an amazing promotion," try something like, "I'm excited about this new challenge at work." The difference might seem subtle, but the impact on how others perceive your news can be enormous. Now, let's go back to our envious friends. How do we identify them? Here are some warning signs. 1. The backhanded complimenter. Their congratulations sound more forced than a bon appetit at a vegan dinner. They'll say things like, "Wow, you're lucky that happened to you," as if luck was the only factor. 2. The professional minimizer. No matter how big your achievement is, for them, it's always due to luck or not that big of a deal. 3. The compulsive competitor. Your success is just an excuse for them to tell you how they did it better, faster, or cheaper. 4. The saboteur in disguise. They cheer you on in public but do everything they can in private to derail your plans. 5. The information collector. They always want to know more details. Not out of genuine interest, but to find flaws or copy your ideas. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to protecting yourself. The second is developing what I call an oyster mentality. You know how oysters produce pearls by taking an irritant and turning it into something beautiful? In the same way, you can take the envy of others and use it as motivation to keep growing and improving. Remember, your value doesn't decrease because of someone else's success. Nor does it increase because of their failures. As writer Mark Twain once said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Focus on your own path, your own goals, and your own growth. Envy is often a reflection of others' insecurities. As Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." So, the next time you feel the envious gaze of someone, smile, not because you enjoy their discomfort, but because you found a sign that you're on the right path. In summary, being selective about whom you share your successes and plans with isn't about being selfish or arrogant, it's about protecting your energy, maintaining your motivation, and, yes, shielding yourself from toxic envy. As philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "Don't worry about what others think of you, they care much less than you imagine." So, the next time you have big news or an exciting plan, take a deep breath, smile to yourself, and guard it like a treasure, sharing it only with those you know will truly be happy for you. And remember, the best success is the one that doesn't need to be announced. Let your achievements speak for themselves, after all. Actions always speak louder than words and definitely attract less envy. If you've made it this far, drop a comment. That way I'll know the winners who made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this in the future. Share this video with your loved ones so they can apply this wisdom today.